Hello, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Okay, welcome to the Wealthy Trustee webinar. I am your host, Christina Yvette. Thank you so much for being here this evening. So, if you guys want to know more about how to actually set up a trust, how to build generational wealth the right way, and how to protect your assets, then you have come to the right place because that is what you're going to be learning this evening here during the webinar. So I have a short presentation for you guys. It is going to take about 90 minutes, and then I'll open up the floor for Q&A so that I can answer any and all questions that you guys might have based on the short presentation. So allow me to quickly introduce myself. My name is Christina Yvette. I'm the founder of 7 Ways to Wealth, which is a financial literacy company where we teach people how to set up their own trust and protect their assets. Now, the way that I came into becoming a trustee, I've been a trustee for 11 years. And the way that I came into trusteeship was by way of real estate, but I wasn't always a real estate investor. So I was actually a registered nurse, and I was pretty much living in the rat race, right? So I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was super frustrated because I had a 1-year-old baby and I could not take care of my baby. So my mom was taking care of my son while I was working 5 and 6 days a week in the hospital, 12-hour shifts. And I was so frustrated that I didn't have any time freedom, right? And so I told myself one day, I said, I have to do something else. I have to find another way to make money because I want to spend more time with my son, right? He's only 1 year old. So I was driving to work one day and I hear this guy, he is a mentor. His name is Than Merrill. So I hear him and he says on the radio, he's like, do you want to learn how to flip houses? And I said to myself, yes, I want to learn how to flip houses. So when he said that, he's like, sign up for my 3-day seminar. So I paid $200 and I end up signing up for the seminar. I went for the 3 days and I learned so much about real estate that I never knew, right? And it actually put me in a him right in the eye, and I'm like, will you be my mentor? Him right in the eye, and I'm like, will you be my mentor? And he said yes. And so he lent me all of the money for that property, and he told me, he's like, you need to put that property into a trust. And at that time, I was 25 years old, and I didn't know what a trust was because I grew up in extreme poverty, right? And so my parents, they didn't talk about trust. I've never even heard of what a trust was. And so I began to do my research and see that, that it's a very powerful entity. So he showed me all the steps that I needed to take in order to set up my own trust. And at that time, that property was in an LLC. So I had to transfer it out of the LLC that I just created and into a trust so that I could protect that property. Why? Because I was young, I was 25 and I never did a real estate deal before. And that property was going to be flipped, right? And so there was contractors coming in and out, subcontractors, anyone could have gotten injured on the property. So I could not take the chance of putting myself in a position to where someone, slip and fell or stepped on a nail or got hit by plywood, and then they had the opportunity to sue me and take their property away. So I wasn't willing to take that chance because at that point in time, I was hungry, right? I was hungry for more. I was hungry for change. And I knew that real estate was my way out of the rat race, right? When I tell you I was living paycheck to paycheck, every single time that I got paid, every 2 weeks, I had to go to Cash Advance America in order to get a $500 payday loan, right? And I was in that type of rat race where I had to go every 2 weeks to get a loan just to get an extra $500. Why? Because I couldn't make ends meet. It was so frustrating for me, right? And being, a new mom too. So I said to myself, I said, this is like my only shot, and I'm not going to be able to like take any risk here. So I have to set up this trust. I have to put this property into the trust. And so that's what I ended up doing, right? I set up the trust and I've been operating within Trustee ever since. And that was 11 years ago. And that first property, I ended up flipping it. So I bought it for $89,000 and I sold it for $235,000. And when I realized that I made six figures off of one little two-bedroom, one bath house in Miami, I was like, my whole life changed basically. I was shocked. I was like, okay, I just made six figures off of one piece of real estate. Like, I have to do this. So that is what that was 11 years ago, right? And that is what put me in a position today where I'm totally, set free, right? So I was able to retire myself from nursing after 8 years. I have a seven-figure portfolio, three businesses. So it put me in a state of financial freedom, right? I don't have to ever work for anyone again. It put me in a state of location freedom. I don't have to, I don't have to be stuck in one location. I travel the entire world, right? Tomorrow I'm going to Singapore, right? So it put me in a position of location freedom and then time freedom, right? So today I have three children, right? And I'm able to drop them off to school, pick them up from school, go to soccer practice, all of these things because I put myself in that position to where I set up a trust and I've been operating this trust and building wealth intentionally with this trust through real estate. So, with that being said, I'm going to teach you the wealth building formula that has put me in a position of financial freedom. And I just want you guys to know what that blueprint looks like because it can potentially put you in the position of financial freedom as well. Okay. So let's get started. I do have a short presentation for you guys. I'm going to dive right in and we're going to talk about trust, right? So I know that a lot of you guys have heard like the term trust or trust funds and things like that, trust fund babies, all kind of stuff. So we're gonna talk in depth about it. But before we get started, I want to check the pulse in the room. So we got 40 people in the building. I want to see how you guys are doing and where you're tuning in from. So I'm going to put, you guys can come on camera. I do not want to be alone by myself. So we see all these beautiful faces. Everyone looks like they are off camera. There's a few of us. Okay. Hello, hello. I see Dwayne. I see Edward. I see Frasia. Is it Farida? Frida. Hi, Frida. Hi, Kim. Hi, Cynthia. Let's see. Hold on. All right, Liz. All right, I see Zem. I can't see the first name though. Is it Shananda? Is it Shananda? All right. Falia. All right, Daryl. So where are you guys tuning in from? If you could put it in the chat or you guys can come off mute. And I see the fire emojis. Thank you so much.
Bay Ridge, Brooklyn.
Brooklyn in the house. I love it. I love New
Mhm.
York. My mom, she was born in the Bronx, but
Oh, okay.
I love Brooklyn though. Houston. Okay, we got Texas. We have Baltimore. All right. Okay, Jersey. Jacksonville. I'm a Floridian. I love Florida. Atlanta. Yes. Awesome. I love ATL. San Diego, California. I love it. I love San
Hey,
Diego.
Christina from the UK.
Oh, the UK. Up it. Where are you? Where are you? Are you in London?
In London,
Oh,
yeah.
I love London. Okay. Oh, we have Denmark, we have Savannah, we have Dallas. I love Dallas. Dallas is beautiful. Louisiana. What part of Louisiana? I was just there like 2 weeks ago. I went to New Orleans. All right, McKinney, Maryland. This is beautiful. See, we are tuning in from all different parts of the country and even the world. So this is so refreshing to see it. Okay, guys, so I'm just gonna dive right in. And as I mentioned, I have a short presentation. After the presentation, I would love to answer all of your questions. I know you guys are gonna have questions. I do like to make this interactive. So, oh, nice. Okay, let me see. Hold on one second. Let me share my screen here. Give me one moment. And there we go. Technology is very interesting. All right. Are you guys able to see my screen? Let me know. You guys can give me a thumbs up if you're able to see my screen. I would appreciate that so much. Let's see here. Okay, so yes, perfect. You can see my screen. All right. Well, so let's first talk about what an actual trust is, okay? So a trust is a entity just like you. You are a living, breathing entity. A trust is also a living, breathing entity. That is the way it is seen here in society, okay? Which is extremely powerful because if you are a living, breathing entity, and the trust is also a living, breathing entity, that means that the trust can do anything and everything that you can do. So just imagine the what the trust can do, right? So the trust doesn't have any type of limitations, right? It can do any and all things to the extent that a natural person can do, okay? So it's limitless, right? Now, a trust is actually a contract, okay? So this is what we call a contractual entity. All right. So the way that this entity is going to come into existence is by way of a contract. So you're going to create that contract. It's going to become legalized and then you're able to operate it. Okay. So that is extremely powerful. Now, with this contract, there's several different sections to the contract, but there's two sections that I want you to know of now. Okay. So the first section is the declaration of contract. That's where you're declaring what it is and what it is not. So that means that you're declaring that you are, in this contract, you are creating a trust, right? You are not creating a joint venture. You are not creating a limited liability company. You are not creating a corporation. But in this contract, you're creating a trust, okay? And then the other part to the contract is the indenture, right? So that is the actual agreement or what we call the bylaws where you are setting forth the terms and conditions of how you want the trust to be operated. The trust is going to be operated by the trustee. So there's several different parties involved in this contract, okay? So let's just dive in and talk about the different parties that are involved in the contract. Now, the first party that I want you guys to be aware of is the grantor. The grantor is the creator of the trust. That is the individual. Sometimes you might see the word settlor or trustor, okay? So the grantor is the individual who creates the trust for the benefit of someone else, okay? So not for themselves, but for someone else, and that someone else is the beneficiary, okay? Now, with the grantor, they not only create the trust, but they're also going to fund the trust. So that means that they're going to put the first thing of value into the trust. So whatever that is, it could be real estate, it could be cash, it could be stocks, whatever it is that you would like to place into the trust, okay? Now, the second party involved is the trustee. So that's the controller of the trust. So that's the individual who has full control over the assets and management and administration of the trust. So that means that they're administering the trust to the extent of what's set in the bylaws, okay? And they're operating the trust on a day-to-day basis. Now, the trustee is the fiduciary of the trust, okay? And their fiduciary responsibilities are for the beneficiaries, okay? So what we're saying here is that they're operating the trust legally and lawfully for the benefit of the beneficiaries, okay? So it's not for their benefit, okay? Now, the last party involved is the beneficiaries. Those are the inheritors of the trust. Those are the individuals that are going to be receiving distributions from the trust. They're going to be receiving gifts from the trust, and ultimately, they're going to receive the assets that were placed in the trust once the trust is terminated. Now, a typical length of time for a trust is anywhere between 1 to upwards of 100 years, right? So that's usually the time frame or what we call the life and duration of how long you want the trust to exist for. Now, if you're intentional about building generational wealth, then you want that trust to last more than 100 years. So once it's due to expire, you're going to extend it for an additional 100 years. So now that trust has been operating for 200 years, okay? So it's extremely powerful that you incorporate some type of trust within your structure if you want to build generational wealth the right way. So now that we understand the different parties involved in the contract, let's go ahead and talk about the different types of trust. Now, there are several different types of trust, okay? There's hundreds, actually. Now, what you need to do is you need to determine the best type of trust for you and your family, okay? This is so vitally important because it's all in how you're going to operate this trust, right? So what is the purpose and intent of why you're actually creating this trust, right? And how it's going to be operated. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you several different categories that trusts fall under so that you're able to do your due diligence and research and find out which one is the best one for you, okay? So the first category that I want to give you is express versus implied. So an express trust is a written trust. So that means that it's in that contract style, okay? So just like how we mentioned, with the trust, right? Because it's a contract, because it is expressed, that means that it's in black and white and it's on paper and it's written. That's extremely powerful versus an implied trust. So an implied trust is that verbal agreement that transpired between the grantor and the first trustee, but it stays just like that, right? It stays verbal. So it's not written down, it's not in a contract style, it's not tangible, you can't see it or touch it, okay? It's just a verbal agreement that transpired between those two parties, okay? So the next category that I want to give you is simple versus complex. A simple trust is shorter in nature, right? And there's less provisions or bylaws, and the trustee is required to distribute 100% of the money that's inside of the trust. So the trust cannot hold any money, right? Or what we call trust funds. Now, the next category, on the contrary to simple, is complex. So a complex trust, it is longer in nature, so there's more provisions or what we call bylaws, okay? Now, with a complex trust, the trustee, what they're able to do is they're able to hold trust funds, okay? So that means that they do not have to distribute the funds that are inside of the trust, which is extremely powerful if you want to grow the wealth that's inside of the trust, okay? Now, the next category that I want to give you guys is discretionary versus non-discretionary. So a discretionary trust is a trust where the trustee has full discretion to be able to make decisions for the trust that are not inside of the actual contract. So for example, if your contract doesn't say anything about cryptocurrency, but you as the trustee decide that you want to go and buy XRP tomorrow, you're able to do that. Why? Because it is a discretionary trust and you feel that it is in the best interest of the trust for the trust to hold XRP versus a non-discretionary trust, which means that the trustee does not have that ability to be able to make decisions that are not spelled out inside of the contract, okay? So you have some limitation with the non-discretionary trust. Now, the next category that I want to give you guys is statutory versus non-statutory. So every single state has their own statutes and codes, and we call those state laws, right? So with a statutory trust, what we're saying is that the state statutes and codes are embedded inside of the contract, which means that with a trust that has specific state statutes and codes is limited to that one state, right? And so you cannot operate that trust outside of that state. And that trust has to be registered in that state, which means that it becomes a part of the public records, which means that everyone is able to search for the existence of the trust. They're able to see all of the pages inside of the contract. They're able to see what's inside of the trust and who the beneficiaries are, okay? Versus a non-statutory trust. So a non-statutory trust is where there are no state statutes and codes embedded inside of the contract, which means that you're not limited to the one state state where you're setting up the trust. So you can actually use a non-statutory trust in the entire nation, plus all of the US territories, okay, which is extremely powerful because you don't have that type of limitation, especially the fact that you do not have to register it with the state, so it doesn't become a part of the public records. The last category that I want to give you guys is revocable versus irrevocable, okay? So with a revocable and an irrevocable trust, what we're referring to is one party, okay? So we're referring to revocability or irrevocability, okay? And so we're referring to the grantor. And what we're saying here, so with a revocable trust, what we're saying is that the grantor has the power to revoke, meaning that they can revoke the trust and terminate it. They can revoke or remove assets that they've placed inside of the trust. They can revoke or remove the trustees and the beneficiaries, and they can terminate the trust at any point in time. So because the grantor has all of this power and control, typically with a revocable trust, the grantor is going to serve as the creator, as the grantor. They're going to serve as the trustee, and they're also going to serve as the beneficiary. So that means that this one individual is serving in three different capacities. They're the grantor, the trustee, and the beneficiary, okay? So because they have all of this power and control, but also because they're serving in all three positions, this trust is actually seen as their alter ego. So the trust is seen as them, as an extension of them. This trust will also operate with the grantor's social security number, right? So that means that this trust, because it's seen as them, if creditors are coming after the grantor, then that means that they can come after the trust as well. So unfortunately, your assets are not protected with a revocable trust. So those creditors and the creditors, they are able to go after the revocable trust. And let's just say that somebody was trying to sue the trust, right? If the trust was to end up in some form of litigation, then what will happen is the judge will pierce through a revocable trust. If the judge decides to pierce through a revocable trust, that means that one, that trust will be dismantled in court, and two, the judge is going to force you to bring that trust to court. So if you have to bring that trust to court, then what's going to happen is it's going to automatically become a part of the public records. Why? Because all court cases are a part of the public records. So what happens is they're able to see all of the pages of the trust, the net worth of the trust, the beneficiaries of the trust, what assets you have inside of the trust, which is absolutely detrimental to the trust, okay? You do not want to put your trust organization in a position to where it is going to have to go to court, okay? Now, on the contrary to that is an irrevocable trust, right? And so with the irrevocable trust, when we are referring to the grantor, we're saying that the grantor has irrevocability. So that means that they have no power and no control. So they're going to give all that power and all that control to the trustee, okay? So the trustee has all the power and control. And the grantor cannot be a trustee or a beneficiary. So these are three different people, okay? So you have a grantor, you have a trustee, and a beneficiary, okay? So because the grantor has no power and no control, that means that they cannot take back assets that they've placed into the trust. They cannot make any changes to the trust. They cannot remove the trustees or the beneficiaries, and they cannot terminate the trust at all. So this type of trust is seen as a separate entity. It's not seen as their alter ego, which is powerful. Because it's seen as a separate entity, that means that with this trust, that trust is one, it's separated, but two, it's going to operate off of its own 9-digit number, which is an EIN, versus off of the grantor social security. So with this type of trust, because the grantor has no power and no control, if there are creditors coming after the grantor, they cannot come after the trust because the trust is a separate entity, which means that your assets are fully protected, okay? So they are fully protected from creditors, okay? Or even lawsuits, right? So if the trust was to end up in some form of litigation, right? a judge would decide not to pierce through an irrevocable trust because of the nature of the contract, okay? So that is the type of situation that you want your estate to be in. So let's continue. All right, so now let's talk about how to actually create a trust, okay? So these are the steps that you want to take. Now, step one says to determine the type of trust that you actually want to create, right? So I just gave you guys a list of different categories. Now, this is what I recommend. So if you guys want to create what we call a bulletproof trust that's actually going to hold up in court and that's actually going to protect your assets and actually last many generations into the future, then you want it to fall within these categories. So one, you want it to be an express trust contract. Two, you want it to be discretionary. Three, you want it to be complex in nature so that you're able to hold funds in the trust. Four, you want it to be non-statutory so you can operate in the entire United States and all U.S. territories. And then lastly is that you want it to be irrevocable so that it's seen as a separate entity, the assets are fully protected, and it's operating off of its own EIN number, okay? Now, what I want you to do is I want you to do your research and your due diligence to find out what's the best type of trust for you and for your family and for your business, okay? So let's move on to number two. So in number two, we're going to determine what we're going to name the trust. Now, this is what I want you to be aware of. You do not have to have the word trust in the actual name. And then the second thing is this is the biggest mistake that I see people make. They make the mistake of actually using their own name. So if their name is John Doe, then they're going to call it the John Doe Trust. That is the biggest mistake that people make, and I don't want you to make that mistake, okay? Because at the end of the day, you don't want anyone to be able to trace the trust back to you, okay? So don't name it after yourself. Now, the second component to this is that you have to appoint the different parties. So you have to appoint the grantor, the trustees, the beneficiaries, and the successors, right? So now, if you're creating a revocable trust, then you can serve as the grantor, trustee, and beneficiary. If you're creating an irrevocable trust, then you cannot be the grantor and the trustee. So you have to determine if you want no power and no control or all the power and all the control. So I recommend that you have all the power and all the control as the trustee. All right. And then the beneficiaries are going to be your children or your next of kin or your spouse or whoever you want to actually benefit from the assets that you're placing into the trust. And last is your successor trustee. So that's the person who's going to take over after you in the event that something happens to you, meaning that if you become incapacitated, if you decide that you want to resign from the trust, or if you don't wake up tomorrow and you transition, someone needs to be able to take over after you because the trust needs to be able to be continuing to operate, okay? And so that person is going to be your successor trustee, okay? So it's vitally important that you have that you have nominated someone in that position because tomorrow is not promised, okay? Now let's move on to number three, which is to create the actual trust agreement. So remember, I said that with this actual contract, you have to create the contract. Now, there are special provisions that you want to place inside of the contract, okay? So one of the provisions that that you have to put inside of your trust are spendthrift provisions. So spendthrifts are your beneficiaries that they want to frivolously spend money that is inside of the trust, right? And so you don't want that to happen. So what you want to do is you want to put yourself in a position to where you're controlling the money from the grave, okay? And I'm going to say that again because it's super important. You want to put yourself in a position to where you're controlling the money from the grave. That means that you're going to put some very strict spendthrift provisions in there. For example, you could have an education restriction to say, hey, you have to have a 4-year degree, or you have to have You have to be trained in accounting and budgeting. You have to have some form of financial literacy, or you have to go through an apprenticeship, or you have to be mentored by the trustee, right? So there's so many different education restrictions that you can put. You can also put an age restriction to say, you have to reach a certain age before you're able to receive money from the trust. So typically people like parents, they'll put like 21, 25, 30, something like that, right? So let's just say that you choose 25 years old. So what's happening? That individual that's 25 years old, they probably have already graduated from college, right? They're probably getting married, having their first child, things of that nature, right? Or maybe they just entered into their career. So they've reached a level of maturity to where now they're able to make sound decisions, especially financially, and be responsible financially to where they are going to make the best decisions for the money that they're receiving inside of the trust, right? And they've reached all of the requirements, which is powerful, right? Versus a 2-year-old, right? So let's just say that they're getting $10,000 a month. A 2-year-old doesn't need $10,000 a month. But if you have an age restriction of 25 years old, then the 25-year-old can probably benefit from $10,000 a month, okay? You can also put a distribution restriction to say that you want them to spend the money on certain things. So you can say, hey, I want 25% of your distribution to go to real estate. I want 50% of your distribution to go to maintaining your lifestyle, right? Or I want 10% to go to stocks, right? So you're able to also put a restriction on what they can spend the money on, but then you can also put a restriction on what they cannot spend the money on. So for example, let's just say that you put a restriction to say, hey, you are restricted from spending the funds on gambling or going to the casino or cigarettes and tobacco or alcohol or the lottery, things like that, right? So you or illicit drugs, right? So you are able to make those restrictions and they have to abide by those restrictions or they will not qualify to receive the distributions from the trust, which is powerful, okay? So when I tell you that a trust is the most powerful entity in the world, I really do mean it, okay? So let's move on to number 4. So number 4, we're actually going to legalize the trust. So what we're going to do is we're going to get it notarized. So there's 2 signatures that's required. So the first one is the grantor signature. The second one is the trustee signature because this is a 2-party contract, right? Where those individuals have to agree and abide by the actual trust indenture or agreement. So once those 2 signatures are witnessed by the notary is going to sign and place their seal. That legalizes the contract for now the trustee to be able to operate the contract. So once they start operating the trust, right, that means that the first thing that you want to do is you want to fund the trust, okay? So then we'll move on to number 5, where if you are funding a trust, you definitely want to open up a bank account for that trust, okay? So now that you know that you want to open up a bank account, right? That's where you're going to house the trust funds, okay? So when you hear the term trust fund, we're actually talking about a bank account where trust funds are held, okay? So now let's talk about it. So you can actually set up an account for a trust with any financial institution that offers a trust account. So you have banks, you have credit unions, and you also have brokerages, okay? So you will set up an account and you will fund it with whatever the minimum is. Some banks, their minimum is $100. Some banks, their minimum is $1,000 or $3,000 or $5,000. It just depends on the bank. The types of accounts that you're able to get for a trust are a checking account, a savings account, a money market account, as well as a cash management account, okay? So those are the types of accounts where you're going to hold trust funds. Now, what you're going to bring with you to the bank is a certificate of trust, which is proof of identity that the trust exists. So just like how you walk around with a driver's license or state ID, the trust is also going to walk around with identification, okay? And then the second thing is that EIN number. So we apply for a employer identification number with the IRS. specifically for banking purposes. So you're going to bring that letter with you to the bank as well, and then they're going to open up a trust account for you, and then you're going to fund it, right? So let's just say you fund it with $100, which is the minimum, okay? So now you have that bank account, it's funded with $100. So now you can move forward with transferring the rest of the assets that you want to place into the trust, okay? So now let's move on to number 6, where we're going to be talking about transferring assets into the trust. So when it comes to transferring assets, this is the biggest mistake that I see a lot of people make, and I don't want you to make this mistake. So when it comes to you transferring assets, right, it's going to require you to do 2 things. The first thing is that you have to list the asset inside of the trust indenture in one of the schedules, okay? The second component is that you actually have to legally transfer the asset with the county or the state, okay? So for example, let's talk about your primary residence, because our homes are our biggest investments, right? They are our most valuable assets. Let's just be honest. So you have this house that you live in, okay? And this house is in your personal name. So what you want to do is you want to transfer it into the trust. So that's going to require you to deed over the property. Now, when you bought that property, you received a deed, probably a warranty deed, okay? So that property right now is in your personal name. So now you're going to have to redeed the property into the name of the trust, and then you're going to have to record it with the county recorder's office, and then they are going to record the new deed, and the public records is now going to reflect and show that the property, that house, your primary residence, is now owned by a trust. So that is the legal transfer that needs to happen. This is the biggest mistake that I see people make. They'll set up a trust, they will list the house inside of the trust contract, but never legally transfer the house, right? And then they end up in big trouble, right? So you don't want to make that mistake, okay? So I'll show you further what those steps look like. So we'll talk about that in just a moment, okay? But don't skip this step, okay? So this is the process that you want to take when you are setting up a trust and funding your trust. So let's continue. All right, so these are the things that a trust can actually protect you from. So the reason why you want to actually create a trust is for privacy purposes, right? And then also for asset protection, to protect those assets. Now, a trust can protect you from bankruptcies, from divorce, from foreclosures, from heavy taxes, from lawsuits, and even probate, okay? So we'll talk about just a few of them. So let's talk about, you know what? I'm just going to talk about lawsuits and probate, okay? So let's talk about lawsuits. Now, a lot of people, they don't understand that we live in a very suit-friendly country, right? And everyone wants to sue you. But a lot of us, we're just walking around thinking that we're not going to get sued. So when I say everyone, I mean your brother, your sister, your mom, your dad, right? Your neighbor, your coworker, your employee, your employer, right? All of these your best friend, everyone, they want to sue you. Okay. So you do not want to wait until you're getting sued to protect yourself from a lawsuit. You want to protect yourself now while you're not in that situation. Okay. So when it comes to lawsuits, right? Because the United States, like I said, is a very suit-friendly country. So when it comes to lawsuits, you need to be able to safeguard those assets, right? And so that means that obscurity is important, right? So you don't want to have these things in your personal name, because with lawsuits, they are able to come after things that are in your personal name, okay? So for example, let's just say that you have a company, right? And your company is an LLC. My question to you is, what does LLC stand for? So you guys come off mute. Let me know, what does LLC stand for?
Oh, limited liability.
Yep, limited liability. Thank you so much. Okay, so limited liability company, right? So you actually hear it in the actual name of the entity. So what we're saying is that that company has limited liability. So now my question to you is, if the company has limited liability, then who do you think has the other half of that limited liability?
The owner.
Thank you so much. Okay, he's on point, you guys. So the owner, and who is the owner? So if you have an LLC, come off mute and let me know who's the owner of your LLC.
You.
All right.
We are. We are.
Okay. All right. So that's true. So that's exactly what the issue is, right? Is that a lot of us, we have set up LLCs and we made ourselves the owner of the LLC without even knowing that we're going to
They
ultimately be
suddenly, let me
liable.
clear our house. They suddenly
Right.
want, I just heard,
So you
they
so you
are
don't want to put
temporary.
yourself in that position, right? So let's just talk about it briefly. So you're operating an LLC and now you're the authorized member of that LLC. So you're the owner, right? And so if somebody decides to sue your LLC, right? Let's just say that one of your clients, they're like, oh, something went wrong. And now, you sold me a candle and my house burnt down, right? And so they want to sue you for $500,000 because that's how much your house is worth, right? So they're going to go after your LLC. It's very easy for them to find your LLC. Right? It's very easy for them to find out who the owner of your LLC is, right? All they have to do is go to the Secretary of State's website. They have to put in the name of your LLC and all of the company's detail comes up, right? And including who the authorized member is, which is you. So now they know who they have to go after. So now they've initiated a lawsuit against your LLC. And so now your LLC is in litigation and the judge says, yep, you made those candles. That candle is the reason why the house burned down. And now your LLC has a judgment for $500,000. Well, what's going to happen? Right? So the LLC has to cover that judgment. So the LLC better have $500,000 in the bank. But what if the LLC doesn't have $500,000 in the bank? Then what's going to happen? Well, the judge can decide to pierce through the corporate veil. So piercing through the corporate veil means that they are going to penetrate through that little itty bit of protection that you thought you had, right? So you had this little tiny umbrella, and with that little umbrella, you thought that you were protected. But in actuality, you were not protected. Why? Because now the judge is piercing through that umbrella. And when I'm telling you it is storming because now what they're going to do, they're going to go after you personally, right? Because you are liable for the LLC. So that means that they're going to garnish your wages if you have 1099 or W-2 income that's associated with your Social Security. They're going to garnish your entire bank account. So every single bank account that you own with Bank of America, Wells Fargo, and Chase, they're going to garnish that bank account. Why? To fulfill that $500,000 judgment. Then what they can do is they can seize your assets. Okay. So that means that they can seize your house where you live with your children. They can seize your vehicles. They can seize your jewelry. They can seize if you have artwork, whatever it is that you have, right? They're able to seize those assets, liquidate those assets to be able to cover that judgment. So that is something that you do not want to go through. So now let me show you what it looks like for you to be protected. So let's just say, once again, you have an LLC and your client or your customer wants to sue you, right? Because you got that candle business. Well, what you need to do is, instead of you owning that LLC in your personal name, you're going to set up a trust. That trust is going to own the LLC. So you're going to remove yourself from the LLC. You're going to add the trust as the new owner. And now when they try to come after you, right? They cannot see who the owner is because all they see is the name of an entity. So let's just say that the entity's name is Plant Estate, right? And so that's all they see. They just see Plant Estate, right? They don't see your name anywhere, which is what you want. So that's why I'm saying obscurity. Obscurity is so important, right? Because now your name is no longer visible on the public records. And so now when it comes to this judgment, what they're going to do is they're going to go after the trust, right? And that particular trust, because it's holding an LLC, that trust doesn't have $500,000 in it. So what's going to happen? You're going to bankrupt the trust, right? And then that's it. They're not able to move forward with the judgment, right? So that's just one way and one thing for you to think about, right? So now let me quickly show you. Let me show you. One second.
Just a quick story of why.
Hold on one second. So this is a quick story from one of our community members.
Just a quick story of why I'm here. I was sued. I lost everything. And when I say everything, I'm talking about a $700,000 house. I'm talking about 4 vehicles. I'm talking about my bank account. I'm talking about my life savings. I believed in having 6 months of expenses put up, saved up just in case anything happened, lost a career and stuff like that. All of that was gone. And there was no protection for me. Then I had my 3rd bout with cancer. I haven't had any income since 2020, since COVID. As I told you, I think yesterday, I've been looking for a way to protect myself because I have children that are going to depend on me. So I would encourage anyone that would listen to anything that has been taught and said by you, please, 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 if you work hard to gain assets, do whatever you can do to protect your assets. Why do you think they've hid this from us for so long? Why do you think they were the only ones that were saying trust fund babies? It was because they were the only ones who were privileged to know this, who was privy to this knowledge. Now we have it through Christina. And I thank you for your level of knowledge and for not being a gatekeeper and for giving us what we need to know in order to make this happen. So please, 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 if you endeavor to get anything in this world and to keep anything in this world, please, please, please protect it. Get your trusts. And I have no reason other than my knowledge and what I've been through. But the only reason I'm here is because I've been through it. So I would encourage anyone.
So please do not wait until you're getting sued in order to protect yourself. You have to protect yourself now before events like this happen because they happen unexpectedly. And then you're in a situation where the rug is being pulled from underneath you. And the last thing that you want is someone knocking on your door where you and your children live to let you know that you have to leave because they are auctioning your home away, right? So now the next one that I want to talk to you guys about is something vitally important, right? So I have a question for you. Come off mute and let me know. Your house where you live, your primary residence, right? This house is in your personal name. If something were to happen to you to where you did not wake up tomorrow, my question to you is, how do you expect that house to be transferred to your son, to your daughter, to your wife, or your husband, or whoever you want for that property to go to? So please come off mute, let me know what you think. What does that look like?
It'd be terrible unless I already put it in a trust for them and have the trust own the house.
Yes. Okay. Okay, Gavin. Okay, what do you think would happen? So right now this house is in your name. What do you think would happen? What do you think that they would go through?
Oh, they would go probate, the courts, all that nonsense. The courts would have lawyers and would just eat away at whatever equity is in the house. And next, before I know it, my kids don't have anything. My widow just has nothing, if not nothing, maybe a few Indian pennies to rub together, a few rupees to rub together.
And it also could take years for it to go through probate.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I have heard of people being in probate for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, right? So you guys are absolutely correct. So yes, one thing that you need to know is that if this house is in your personal name and you did not wake up tomorrow, then it's going to take a judge to be able to transfer that property to your son or your daughter or your spouse. So you will be forcing them to go into the court system. Because unfortunately, if something were to happen to you, no one can sign on your behalf. So there is no one to sign, where you're required to sign so that that deed is transferred, right? So that's why it's what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain what the probate process looks like so that you guys can better understand it, okay? So let's just say that you have a house, a car, and $500,000 in the bank, and you did not wake up. The first thing that happens is the state where you're a resident, they're going to create a living estate for you, a dead person. Okay? So they create a living entity for a dead entity. Okay? Now, the reason why they do this is because you did not do it yourself. You did not create the estate while you were living. So they have to do it for you. Okay. They have to now take responsibility for all of your assets because you did not. Okay. So now they create the estate and they're going to name it after you. So if your name is John Smith, they're going to call it the John Smith Estate. Okay. They're going to legally transfer your house, your car, and the cash money into the John Smith estate, right? And now your estate is going to go straight into the court system, specifically the probate court system. So your estate is going to be represented by a probate attorney, and your estate now is going before the judge. The first thing that the judge does is the judge is going to pay off your liabilities. Your liabilities is all of the debt that you had at the end of life. So meaning that if you had student loans from 30 years ago, if you had credit cards, lines of credit, mortgages, car loans, all of that debt needs to be paid off, right? Another thing that people don't think of is the medical bills, right? So just think about the amount of medical bills that you're going to have at the end of life. That's a lot, right? You might have been sitting in the ICU for 10 days. That's like a $600,000-$700,000 bill, right? You didn't think about that. You did not, right? But then a lot of us were like, oh, well, I have health insurance, right? No, because the insurance company is going to want to get reimbursed, right? Especially Medicare and Medicaid, they want to get reimbursed. So they're going after your estate, okay? So you could have been in the ICU, you could have been in a rehab, a nursing home, anything like that. So a lot of us, we don't think to that extent, but I need you to think about that because those are very important factors in this whole entire situation dealing with your estate. So now what's going to happen is the judge is going to pay off all those liabilities, right? And if there is not enough money to pay off your liabilities, then what's going to happen is the judge is going to start liquidating your assets, meaning that that house that you have where your children live, the judge is going to decide to sell that house. Why? Because you have to pay back Medicaid and Medicare, and you have, a student loan from 30 years ago that needs to be paid back, right? And you didn't leave enough cash in order to cover for all those things. So now you have your children that are fighting inside of the court system. Unfortunately, sometimes we see the children fighting each other, but then sometimes we see them fighting the court system. To do what? To keep mom's house, to keep dad's house, right? And so they're fighting, fighting, fighting. How many times have you seen it to where people's homes are being auctioned on the county steps or the county's website? We see it so many times. Why do you think that happens? Because of things like this, where the properties end up in probate, right? So you don't want that to happen, right? So I will tell you right now that during this process, right, when the judge has liquidated your assets, has paid off your liabilities, and then the attorney, they're going to take their fees. The court system, they're going to take their fees. Once everything has been paid off and everyone has been, it has taken their fees, then whatever is left over is what your children get. Your children literally get the leftovers, right? Which is you doing your family a disservice, because at the end of the day, you knew that you wanted your children to inherit your house. You knew that you wanted your son or your daughter to inherit the money that you have in your bank account, but yet you have done them a complete disservice because you didn't set up your estate now while you're living, because you let the state of Texas do it for you. And you thought that they were going to do right by you, right? Because a lot of people, they have this misconception to think, oh, I only have one son, so everything's going to my son. Oh, I only have one daughter. Oh, I have a will, right? A will is a wish list. A will is your last will and testament, where you're saying, I wish my son will get my house. I wish my daughter will get my car. It's a wish list because a will is not an entity. It cannot own anything. A will is a set of legal instructions that's designed to be carried out in the probate process. And so that is a list of instructions that you're giving to the judge to say, hey, I wish that my son will get my house. But then the judge still decides to sell your property because you have to pay back Medicaid, right? So a will is, once again, it's a wish list, but everything that's inside of the will can go into the trust, all of those provisions, right? So a will then becomes obsolete, right? Once you have a trust, okay? So it is vitally important that you get your affairs in order. So now let's just say that you decided, hey, I want to get my affairs in order and I want to create my estate now while I'm living. So you go ahead and set up your trust, right? And then you place your house into the trust. You place your car into the trust. You open up a bank account, and that $500,000 that you have in your personal name, you transfer it into the trust, right? So now it belongs to the trust. Well, you are the trustee, so you're operating the trust. You're controlling everything. You're controlling the house, the car, and the cash, okay? If something were to happen to you where you didn't wake up tomorrow, guess what? Your family gets to grieve in peace because they get to avoid the entire probate process. Why? Because all of those assets belong to the trust. They don't belong to you. You transitioned, but guess what? You had a succession plan in place. Your succession plan is that you decided to appoint a successor trustee to take over after you in the event that something were to happen like this, right? Which we all know that we're going to expire one day, right? So we need to have a plan in place. So you already appointed someone to be your successor, and you didn't wake up tomorrow. So now that successor is going to pick up where you left off. They're going to continue to operate the trust. And at the end of the day, the trust is the one that owns the house. The trust is the one that owns the car. The trust is the one that has the bank account with the $500,000 in it. Last time I checked, the trust didn't transition, you transitioned. So because the trust still exists and the way that you set it up is going to exist for the next 100 years, your children get to grieve in peace. They receive their entire inheritance because they're beneficiaries of the trust. So they're going to receive distributions from the trust, gifts from the trust, right? Until the trust expires, and then they'll receive the property and the assets, right? And the entire probate process is avoided because you're only going to end up in probate for the things that are in your personal name. But because you were so smart and decided to get your affairs in order now while you're young, right? While you still have the time and energy and capacity to do so, right? You're not bedridden, you're not at, your last days on earth, right? And so you decided to do it now, then your family gets to now be able to avoid that entire process. And the most beautiful component is that all of that debt that you had at the end of life, that debt dies with you. Those companies, they have to discharge that debt, right? The student loan company, discharge, right? Medicare, Medicaid, they won't be able to collect. Why? Because you don't have anything in your personal name tied to your Social Security. Everything belongs to the trust. You are not the trust is not you. This is extremely powerful. This is what I need you to understand. This is going to set your family free because I will tell you right now, I'm sitting in your face letting you know that our children are losing their inheritance. Why? Because we do not have our affairs in order. So I'm stressing this to you that it is super important for you to get your affairs in order because we have bought into the lie that society has told us, thinking that our children automatically receive our assets when they don't. I guarantee you they don't. 9 times out of 10, they don't. Do you know that 90% of families, they lose their inheritance or their wealth by the second generation? Why is that happening? Because we don't have the knowledge that we need, because we're not structured the right way, because we decided not to protect the house and the money, right? Because we're not operating within trust. That's why this is happening, right? And so we have to make those changes. It's going to take individuals like you to be able to break those chains. It takes just one person to set an entire bloodline free, and that one person is you. So let's dive into the next segment, which is the wealth building formula. So hold on, let me go ahead and share my screen. All right, guys, so this is the wealth building formula. So remember, I told you at the beginning of the call that I wanted to show you how to build wealth the right way that actually lasts generations. So this is the formula that you want to take, okay? I have 3 pillars here. The first one is structure, the second one is credit, the third one is invest. So with structure, the first thing that I need you to know is that if you don't have trust within your structure, you need to get restructured. The second thing is that you should have a for-profit and a nonprofit within your structure. So these are the 3 trusts that I recommend. I recommend a business trust, a family trust, and a tax-exempt nonprofit trust. So let's break down each type of trust. So the first one is the business trust, and that is for my entrepreneurs and business owners on the call that have the LLCs and the corporations. Remember when I was explaining to you about lawsuits and limited liability, right? So let's just say that you have that LLC, right? You do not want to own your LLC in your personal name. So what you're going to do is you're going to do an amendment to the articles of organization. You're going to remove yourself as the owner of that LLC. You're going to add the business trust now as the owner. So this business trust, right, you can operate it two ways. You can operate it like a traditional business. So instead of you going to the Secretary of State and opening up an LLC, if you don't have one already, then you can establish the business trust and then operate your business. Or you can do it the second way, which is if you already have the business, which is the LLC or the corporation, then what you'll do is you will establish a business trust that is going to act as a holding company, which means that it's going to be non-operational. It doesn't have any products or services. And what's going to happen is it's going to actually hold the LLC. So it's going to be the owner of the LLC. So all of the funds that the LLC generate, the business trust is going to hold on to it, okay, just in case there are any claims against the LLC. So let's just say that your LLC generated $100,000, right? Well, what happens to that $100,000 is you can do a distribution and you can distribute it straight into the business trust. So now the business trust has the $100,000, right? Now, one thing that I love about the business trust is that you're going to spend the money first and be taxed on the leftovers. I'm going to say that again. You're going to spend the money first and then you're going to be taxed on the leftovers, whatever is left, okay? So what is going to happen is out of that $100,000, whatever your operating expenses are, that's tax deductible. So you're going to go ahead and deduct it. And so let's just say that it costs $30,000 in order for you to operate your trust, right? So that $30,000 is going to be written off on your taxes, and now you have $70,000 left, right? And so remember, this is a trust, right? Where it's a complex trust where you can go ahead and you can have funds stay inside the trust. But if you have funds stay inside the trust, those funds are then going to be taxed. So that $70,000 that you have inside of the trust, you're going to have to pay taxes on it, okay? Or you can do something that is so beautiful and unique to a trust, which means that you can distribute that money to the beneficiary, okay? And then that whole distribution is tax deductible. So what we do is we make the family trust the beneficiary of the business trust so that the money can flow from the business into the family. So now we have that $70,000. That $70,000 is going to be distributed to the beneficiary, which is the family trust. And that $70,000 is going to be written off. So remember, we had $100,000 that came into the business trust. $30,000 was written off on operating expenses, and then $70,000 was written off on a distribution. And so now we have $0 left in the business trust, which means that we have a 0% tax liability. So we're done paying taxes on the business trust. So now we're going to move to the family trust. So on the family trust level, right? This trust is designed for personal assets and for personal reasons outside of the business, okay? So that means that you are going to have your primary residence in here, right? And all of your family expenses are going to come out of here, and your children are going to be the beneficiaries of this family trust, okay? So once again, we're going to spend the money first and we're going to be taxed on the leftovers. So what came into the family trust? Well, the business trust distributed $70,000 into the family trust. So the family trust received that as income because the family trust is a for-profit entity. So now the family trust has $70,000 and we need to spend the money first. So we're going to spend it on our family. So what does that look like? That looks like you writing off either your lease, a rental income, or not rental expenses, or your mortgage, right? Your utilities, right? So light, water, gas, things like that, right? And then whatever else that is associated with your family. So if you have kids' tuition, if you have your vehicle, right? So if you have like a car note, or if you have gas or maintenance, if you have property taxes, all of these expenses, right? All of those expenses are tax deductible and they're going to be removed from the family trust. So what we're saying is that the $70,000 came in, and let's just say that it costs operating expenses cost about $60,000, right, to run your family. So we're gonna write off 60,000, so there's 10,000 left out of the 70,000. So what you're gonna do is you are gonna pay taxes on the 10,000, right? Or instead of you paying taxes on the 10,000, right? What you can do is you can contribute, right? Which means that you can donate that 10,000 to a charity of your choice, right? So now at the family trust level, this is what has happened. We had 70,000 that came in. We wrote off 60,000 as operating expenses, and we donated 10,000 to our nonprofit. And now we have $0 left, which means we have a 0% tax liability, which means that we're done paying taxes on the family trust level. So now we're going to move on to the next trust, which is a tax exempt nonprofit trust. This is our charitable trust. This is where you're going to do all of your nonprofit activity. This is where you're going to do all your charitable activity, your philanthropic activity. It could be for religious reasons, it could be general charitable reasons, or it could be educational. So this type of trust, right, is automatically exempt from federal income taxes. Why? Because there is a separation between church and state. And so this type of trust is seen as a church or is seen as a faith-based organization, right? And so you do not have to file for a 501c3 tax exemption. It's automatically exempt, okay? So it's extremely powerful because it can receive donations, gifts, tithes, offerings, all kind of things like that. And you don't have to pay taxes on it. It's automatically exempt on the federal level, okay? Now you can qualify to be exempt from sales taxes, property taxes, city taxes, county taxes, things of that nature, okay? Other forms of taxes, which is extremely powerful. But one example that I want to give you is, let's just say that you're a W-2 employee. Well, the IRS will allow you to donate up to 60% of your annual gross income to the tax exempt nonprofit trust. So for example, let's just say that you make $100,000 annually, right? Well, the IRS will allow you to donate up to $60,000 to this trust, right? And so now you're going to be saving thousands of dollars on taxes, because instead of you being taxed on $100,000, now you're going to be taxed on $40,000. Okay. So that's extremely powerful. And that will allow you to save a lot on taxes so that you can use that money somewhere else, specifically in order to acquire assets. Okay. So let's move on to the second pillar. In the second pillar, we are talking about credit. And so what I want you to know is that the trust can build credit just like how you can build credit. So a lot of us, we are leveraging our personal credit, but you want to be able to establish business credit for the business trust. It'll operate off of the EIN, and then that'll put you in a position to where you can leverage a second credit profile. That will also put you in a position to where you can qualify for higher lines of credit. Right? So instead of you qualifying for 10,000 or 20,000, you'll qualify for 80,000, 100,000, 200,000. Okay. So that is a position you want to put yourself in, because that's you leveraging OPM, other people's money, specifically the bank's money. So the bank is getting rich off of you. The bank is getting rich off of leveraging your money, because when you get paid direct deposit, right, that ACH goes straight into the bank. Now, the bank, what do you think that they're doing with their money? They are lending it out, right? They're lending it out for credit cards, for mortgages, for student loans, right? And so they're getting rich because they're charging high interest for these financial products, right? And so you want to put yourself in that position to where you're also getting rich off of using someone else's money as well, specifically the bank's money. So if the bank is getting rich off of you, you also need to be getting rich off of the bank. All right, so just copy their blueprint. So let's move on to the third one, which is invest, okay? So when it comes to investing, right, these are my two favorite assets, okay? So the first one is an index universal life insurance policy. The second one is real estate. So the index universal life, that is short for IUL. And with this policy, what I want you to know is that life insurance is supposed to be used when you're living, not when you're dead. A lot of people think that life insurance is supposed to be used when they're dead, but in all actuality, if that was the case, then it would be called death insurance and not life insurance. There are a lot of living benefits to life insurance, okay? So a lot of the money that goes into your life insurance, you are able to access it while you are living, and that money can also grow. So with life insurance, your money is protected. So whatever money that you are paying or using to pay your premiums, that money is protected, okay? So meaning that if somebody sues you tomorrow, they cannot take the money that's sitting inside of your life insurance policy. So that is extremely powerful, okay? The second thing is that your money is liquid. So if you need to be able to access the money, they will direct deposit you tomorrow or the day after, okay? So that is extremely powerful. The next thing is that your money is growing tax-free, okay? So that means that as long as you stay within the guidelines when you structure your policy, your money gets to grow tax-free without, without you having to pay on that, which is good. That's what you want. You want to be able to use these types of vehicles where your money is going to be growing and it's going to be compounding, right? The next thing is that you have a death benefit associated with it. So that means that your life is insured. If anything happens to you, then the carrier is going to pay out a specific amount, which is your death benefit. They're going to pay it out to your beneficiary, okay? The next thing is with this type of policy, you have another account. It's a built-in savings account. It's called cash value. All right, so every single time that you are making your premium payments, right, a certain percentage is going to go into your cash value. So for example, let's just say that your premium payments are $100 a month, right? And let's just say that you structured it in a way to where $20 is going to the insurance carrier, that's the cost of insurance, and then $80 is going to your cash value. Well, every single month that you make that $100, $80 is going to your cash value. So that means that it's accumulating, right? So you have $80, $80, $80, $80. It's just accumulating, right? So you're building up money that's inside of your cash value, which is beautiful. But then there's another component to it that is super powerful. So you see the word index in the actual name of this policy, which is Index Universal Life. The index is referring to an indice. An indice is a part of the stock market. You have many different indices. So you have the Dow Jones, you have the NASDAQ, you have the S&P 500, right? So the S&P 500, it stands for Standard & Poor's 500, which tracks the top 500 companies in this country, the USA, okay? So that's your Apple, your Amazon, your Berkshire, your Facebook, right? The big boys, right? So it's tracking their performance. So typically your S&P will give you anywhere between 8 to 10%, let's just say, right? So what the insurance company does is the insurance company is not going to take the risk of investing your cash value into the stock market. That's just too risky because the stock market might crash. So what they'll do is instead they will mirror the stock market to say, hey, whatever the stock market is doing, specifically the S&P 500, we will match that and give you that return on your cash value. So if the stock market is doing 9%, then we're going to give you 9% interest in your cash value, right? On your cash value. So that's extremely powerful because now what we're saying is that not only is the cash value accumulating, but it's also earning interest. So that means that that interest is going to be compounding as well, right? So we have $80, $80, $80, but then now it's making 9%, 9%, 9%. So everything is being compounded, right? Inside of your cash value. So now You have just put your money in a place to where it's going to make money for you, which is exactly what you want to do, right? So if you're intentional about building generational wealth, you need to park your money in places where it will grow. You need to park your money in places where every single dollar is going to go back out and bring back a friend. So for here, with this example, every single dollar that you have in your cash value is going out and it's bringing back 9 cents, right? 9%, which is exactly what you want because now the money is growing, right? The money is earning money. And I will sit here and I will tell you, right, that you do not have to work for money. Your money can work for you. You just have to park the money in the right place. Okay, that is how you become financially free. So with this type of policy, right, when it comes to life insurance, the way that you tie it in with a trust is the trust is going to the trust is going to own your life insurance policy. The trust is going to pay those $100 premiums, right? The $100 is just an example. The trust is going to be the beneficiary, and you are going to be the insured. So if anything happens to you, then guess what? The trust needs to be compensated so that death benefit goes straight into the trust, which is extremely powerful. That is how you want your wealth structured, okay? It needs to be properly structured. If you intend on building generational wealth the right way, if you intend on this wealth reaching the second, third, and fourth generation, it has to be structured the right way. Your life insurance policy also has to be structured the right way, okay? So you have to marry the two, which is extremely powerful. Now, let's talk about real estate because real estate is my favorite thing on earth, okay? I have been a real estate investor for 11 years and it has set me free to where I was able to retire myself at 31 years old, okay? So what I need you to know is that a trust can actually own real estate, okay? And when it comes to real estate, right, or when it comes to the trust, a trust can qualify for a mortgage. A trust can also get a home equity line of credit, right? So it's extremely powerful. So this is what ends up happening. Now, you're going to have your trust, acquire real estate. So let's just say that you have a triplex, right? So you got 3 doors under 1 roof, okay? And with this triplex, right, the trust is going to qualify for a mortgage. So let's just say that the trust qualifies for a DSCR loan, right? It stands for debt service coverage ratio loan. So these are loans that I specifically use in order to acquire real estate, okay? So with this type of loan, they will lend you up to 80% of the purchase price, okay? So that means that you're getting 80% with the DSCR, so you need to find the other 20% somewhere else, okay? So now that we have the 80% with the DSCR, we need to go find the 20%. So remember, if you rewind, we were talking about OPM, specifically the bank's money, okay? Now, when it comes to the bank's money, right, you're going to get those line of credit and those credit cards from the bank, okay? So let's just say that you built credit for your business trust. You was able to get a credit card for $50,000. What you're going to do is you're going to liquidate that credit card, okay? So that means that you're going to pull the money off of the credit card. That money is then going to be sitting in your bank account. And the first thing that you're going to do is instead of you putting that money straight into the real estate transaction, you're going to funnel that money into your index universal life insurance policy so that your cash value can go up by $50,000. So you're going to park that $50,000 into your policy so that it can work and make money. Remember, your cash value is going to be earning compound interest. So that $50,000 is going to be earning 8%, 7%, 9%, 10%, 11%, whatever the index, however the index is performing, right? The carrier is going to match that, which is what you want. So you have to park that 50,000 into the first, into its first place, okay? Where it's going to be working for you, which is extremely powerful. That's why I'm going to say it again. You do not have to work for money. Money works for you, okay? So if you want to retire young, you are able to do that. You just have to have the right strategy to where you're able to put your money in the right places, okay? Now, me personally, I have 5 index universal life insurance policies. And the reason being is because my trust has 5 people, right? So the trust has taken out an index universal life insurance policy on each person, okay? Which is powerful, okay? So now what you want to do is that 50,000 is just sitting there accumulating the compound interest, but you have to be able to use it for real estate. So you're going to contact the carrier and you're going to let them know that you want a policy loan. So now you have to understand that the carrier sees all of your cash value as liquid, right? It's liquid, you have full liquidity. They see it as collateral. So what they're going to do is they're going to let your $50,000 sit inside of your cash value, accumulating money as if you never touched it, okay? And then what they're going to do is they're going to give you a policy loan and they're going to lend you, let's just say 49,000, right? They're not going to lend you the whole 50. They're not crazy. So they're going to lend you 49,000 out of that 50. And they're going to do a direct deposit into your bank account for $49,000. That $49,000 originated from the carrier's bank account, from their money, from their reserves, because your 50,000 is still sitting inside of the cash value, earning compound interest, and they're lending you their own money. Okay, OPM, other people's money. This is how you build wealth. Okay, this is what the banks are doing. So I will tell you that the banks, right? The big 3, Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, their number one asset. A lot of people think that the banks are getting rich off of, you know, giving out mortgages and student loans and car loans. But in all actuality, their number one asset is life insurance policies. So look it up, Google it. It's called BOLI, BOLI, bank-owned life insurance, okay? And you will see that their number one asset is life insurance policies. So if the banks are getting rich off of life insurance policies, let me ask you this question. What are you going to be getting rich off of if the banks are getting rich off of life insurance policies? Come off mute, let me know.
Well, we should be getting rich off life insurance policies too, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Because you're absolutely right. So you need to do what the bank is doing, okay? So the bank is getting rich off of using other people's money. You're going to get rich off of using the bank's money. The bank, their number one asset is life insurance. What is going to be your number one asset? Life insurance, okay? So it is super powerful. So now we have the $49,000 that is sitting in our bank accounts, right? So our 50 is sitting in cash value. They gave us 49,000 is sitting in our bank account. Now it's time for us to deploy that money to its second location. Okay? So now we're going to deploy it into real estate. So now we are going to go ahead and close on that triplex. Okay? So now we closed on the triplex. It's the first of the month. We're collecting rent. Each unit is giving us $2,000, right? So we have 3 units, 2, 4, 6. That's $6,000, okay? So now we just went and collected $6,000 worth of rental income, okay? So what I want you to realize here is that the $50,000 that you took out of the credit card, that you liquidated out of the credit card, you have parked it in two different places and it's making money for you in two different places. The first place that you put it was in the Index Universal Life Insurance policy. The second place that you put it was in real estate. So it's working in both locations for you, making money for you, right? So now when it comes to the real estate, you just collected $6,000 in rent. So my question to you is, where are you going to put that $6,000? Come off mute. Let me know where you're going to put that $6,000.
Back into the insurance?
Yes, honey.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Yes, she gets it. I'm telling you, she unlocked the whole code. She cracked it. Yes. Okay. So that is you putting yourself in a position to where you're paying yourself first. Okay. So that is what you need to do. You need to put yourself in that position. So instead of you moving that money into the $6,000 that just came in, right? Instead of you paying off the credit card, right? Not paying it off, but paying, the minimum or just making a payment towards the balance. Instead of you paying towards the mortgage, the first place that you're going to put it is inside of your Index Universal Life Insurance policy. Why? Because you have to put that money to work. Because a lot of us, we have been operating the wrong way, okay? We have been programmed into thinking a different way, okay? We've been institutionalized, just to be honest, right? So let me ask you a question, right? When you get paid from your employer on Friday, where does the money go?
Bank account.
Okay, it goes straight into the bank. So that means that you are paying the bank first. That's
Right.
That's first and foremost. You're paying the bank first, right? Now that money that you're putting inside of the bank account, you are lending them that money. That is a loan. You don't even know that when you signed on the dotted line, you are lending your entire paycheck to Bank of America, right? And we
Mhm.
live in a fractional reserve system. So that money that you see on the screen, that money is not there. Do you guys know that? Right.
Mhm.
Right. So you think that you see, $2,000, $3,000 in there. No, it's not even, it's probably $200 in there, right? So you have to be mindful of that because that's how we think. Now, my next question to you is, now that you got your direct deposit, where does the money go?
Lend it out or to the bank's policy, or is lend it out to other individuals to make the bank more money?
Yes, that's what the bank does with your money, right? But what do you do with your money? What is it that you do with your paycheck?
Oh, pay
Typically pay bills.
bills?
Pay
Yeah.
bills and rent.
Hello, hello, hello. Is anybody here with me? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So who did you pay first?
Bill collectors, the bank, and then bill collectors.
You paid the bank first, then you paid the light bill, the water bill, your rent, your mortgage, grocery, car note, gasoline. You paid everybody first. Do you know that these are different companies? These are
Yes,
all,
they are. The
you
Family Biz Trust.
You paid this company and this company and this company and this company and this company. You paid everyone else first instead of yourself. So you have to pay yourself first. So back to our strategy, right? You have the real estate. You got the $6,000 that your tenants just paid you. So you need to pay yourself first. So that money goes straight into your IUL policy. You borrow it back out. So let's just say they give you $5,500, right? It goes straight into your bank account. From there, you deploy that money to its second location. You already paid yourself first, you're good. Your $6,000 is sitting inside of your cash value earning compound interest. You're gonna make 9% off of that $6,000. Now you borrow the $5,500 and you go pay the business credit card. You go pay the mortgage. Whatever is left over, you're going to sit it inside of your trust fund and it's going to accumulate for maintenance, administration, and management. Okay? So now what you're going to do is you're going to rinse and repeat. You're going to repeat this process. You already acquired the first property, right? So now you do it all over again. You acquire the second one, the third one, the fourth one. Because what you want to do is you want to have the trust to be able to sustain itself. You do not want to be pouring in your W-2 money into the trust. The trust has to be able to put you in a position to where you get to retire. That is what you want to do, right? And so this is the wealth building formula, and this is how you're able to build wealth efficiently and effectively so that you can retire young, so that you can retire rich, so that you can travel the world, right? A lot of us, we have bought into the lie that society has told us. So this is the lie that society has told us, right? They have programmed us into thinking that we have to, one, we have to go to school, we have to get a degree, start working, we're going to work 40 hours for 40 years, and then we're going to retire when we're 65. And at 65, then we're going to depend on Social Security, and then we're going to have time freedom, right? This is the wrong way of thinking. This is how we've been programmed, right? And we need to unlearn those ways that society has taught us, right? Because unfortunately, we have been institutionalized since kindergarten, right? They have trained us since kindergarten to be in a concrete box, in a specific location for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then you get your afternoons and evenings free, and you get your weekends free, right? So we have to unlearn that programming, right? And so this is something that I realized when I was very young, and that's why I decided to unlearn all of this stuff, right? Because remember, at the beginning of the call, I told you guys that I was a registered nurse, right? I was a registered nurse for 8 years, okay? I was a registered nurse for 8 years. Now, my second year in nursing, I had a coworker named Audrey. Now, one day, Miss Audrey, she was exhausted, right? She was extremely tired, and I'm young. I'm like 24. So I'm just ripping and running up these hallways, and she's so tired that she can't take care of her patients. So I'm taking care of all of my patients. I'm taking care of all of her patients. So I look at her and I tell her, I said, Miss Audrey, when are you going to retire? You've been a nurse for 40 years, right? So Miss Audrey, she was 65 years old. She was already a nurse for 40 years. I asked her, when are you going to retire? I'm 24 years old. She says to me, oh, Christina, I'm not ready to retire. And I said, why not? She's like, because I'm going to wait until I'm 67 and a half because Social Security is going to give me like an extra $300. And at that point, I was like, Miss Audrey, you're going to wait an extra 2.5 years for an extra $300. And she's like, yes. And it was at that moment that I realized I was not going to be Miss Audrey. I was not going to be 65 years old, still working as a nurse. I wasn't going to be 65 years old, dedicated 40 years of my time to a hospital. I wasn't going to wait till 65 years old to retire. I was not. I wasn't going to wait till I was 65 years old to then be at the age where I'm depending on Social Security. I refuse. So I told myself at that point in time, I said, I am not going to be Miss Audrey. I said, I'm going to give myself 10 years to get out of this career. I love my career, right? But I realized I was spending more time in the hospital with Miss Audrey and with my coworkers and with my patients that I was taking care of. 12 hours a day, right? Couldn't go to the bathroom, couldn't take a lunch break, on my feet, 5 days a week, 6 days a week sometimes because of the nursing shortage. So although it's a lovely career, it wasn't giving me any time freedom. It wasn't giving me financial freedom. I was trapped, right? I was on the hamster wheel. And so it was so frustrating for me. And so I said, I'm not going to be Miss Audrey. And unfortunately, right, that day after work, Miss Audrey was so exhausted. She wasn't feeling good that when she drove out of the parking lot, she hit the tree right in front of the emergency room and she died on impact. She never made it home that day. She never made it to retirement. She never collected her Social Security check, didn't make it to 67 and a half, nothing. It's detrimental. So please do not wait for the golden years or retirement, right? You need to be intentional now. You need to retire now. So that's why I was able to retire myself at 31 years old. I told myself I was going to do 10 years in nursing, and I retired myself in 8 years. The way that I retire myself is the exact formula that I showed you. You set up a trust, you get properly structured, you leverage credit and all of these financial products, right? Loans from the bank, mortgages. You buy real estate and you earn passive income. That is what you want. That is what's going to put you into a space of financial freedom. So let's continue. Now, what I want you to know is that the loans that you're taking from the life insurance policies, you do not have to pay those loans back. They're automatically deducted from your death benefit, okay? So let's dive right in, and then we only have like 2 more slides, and then we will be done. All right, so I want you to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. And I'm going to say it again because it's super powerful. I want you to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. That is stewardship. Stewardship is where you are a good steward of the assets, right? With you're a good steward of the entity, right? Where you're controlling and managing everything the right way. Right? Versus ownership. Ownership is the lie that we have bought into, right? So we have bought into this lie that you are the proud owner of the house, that you're the proud owner of the car, that you're the proud owner of the bank account, right? What you need to know and understand is that society and the government, they want you to be able to use your name and your social security on everything. Why? Because they are tracking you, right? They're tracking you. They know every single bank account that you own. They know how much you have in the bank. They know every single house that you own, every single car that you own. Why? Because your name and your social security is on everything. It's just that easy. So just imagine you being able to take your name off of these assets, to take your social security off of these assets. And now you can use the trust. And now you can use the EIN number. And now they can't track you because they don't know that you're associated with that trust. They don't know that that trust has 10 properties. They don't know that that trust has $1 million. They don't know that you're associated with it. So you need to move away from ownership, right? Because they have programmed us to thinking you want the big house with the white picket fence and the nuclear family and the dog, right? So they have programmed us that way, right? But in all actuality, that is not what you want, right? So a lot of us, when it comes to these properties, right? remember, we have the house, right? And so this house, if you don't wake up tomorrow, the house is still going to be there. Is it not? That land is still going to be there. That house is still going to be there. So in all actuality, a lot of us, we think that we want the ownership, but it's not what you want. What you want is control. You want control over that house. You want control over, over the car, over the bank account, over the cash. And that's what you can get with a trust. All right. So it's not about ownership. So you have to move away from ownership and you have to move towards stewardship. Now, have you ever asked yourself, how am I going to transfer wealth? Right? So the way that you're going to transfer wealth is you're going to set up a trust. You're going to list your children as the beneficiaries. These children, right, are going to receive TCUs. TCUs stand for trust certificate units. All right. And so just like how stock certificates represent ownership in a company, TCUs represent beneficial interest in a trust. So we don't use the term ownership with a trust. Nobody owns a trust. Okay. The beneficiaries have beneficial interest. Okay. So now the TCUs, right? Your children are going to get the TCUs, and then those TCUs are then going to be passed down to their children and their children and their children. Okay, so that is how the wealth is going to be transferred from generation to generation. Now, have you ever seen it to where we have celebrities, famous families, athletes, things like that, right? People like that, to where they lose all of their wealth in their lifetime, or the next generation blows all of the money. We've seen it so many times. And the reason why that happens is because they don't have the tools for preservation. So there's two tools that you need for preservation. The first one is a trust. The second one is the life insurance policies. So once you set up the trust is going to take out a life insurance policy on every single person associated with the trust. So the trust is going to be the owner of the life insurance policy. The trust is going to pay the premiums every single month. The trust is going to then be the beneficiary of the life insurance policy. And then what's going to happen is you are going to be the insured, right? And so the trust is going to take out a policy on every single person associated with the trust, because all of these people are what we call human assets. And the trust is going to insure all of its assets. Just like how the house has homeowners insurance and the car has automobile insurance, the human assets, which are the trustees and the beneficiaries and the future beneficiaries, they also need insurance, right? Because if anything happens to you, then that trust is going to receive the death benefit. So for example, with my policy, my death benefit is $2.8 million. So if I don't wake up tomorrow, my trust is going to receive $2.8 million because my trust is the beneficiary of my life insurance policy, right? So that is how you want to be structured, right? Because at the end of the day, right, the trust needs to insure the human assets, right? And the trust is going to take out a policy on the trustee, on the beneficiaries, on the future beneficiaries. Those future beneficiaries are called trust fund babies. So when you hear the term trust fund baby, that means that there is a baby that has been born into the trust organization. So that means that the beneficiary had a baby, okay? Now, when that baby is 30 days old, the trustee is going to take out a policy on that baby, specifically an index universal life insurance policy, because guess what? That baby's 30 days old. Do you know how much compounding over the years, over the decades is going to happen? Let's just say that this trust fund baby grows up, right? And now they are 18 years old, right? Well, the trust fund baby is about to go to college. And so they need to go ahead and get their first car. So what's going to happen is they're going to go down to the dealership. They're going to pull their credit. They're going to get into a car loan paying $1,000 a month for a $30,000 car. Or instead of them doing all of that traditionally, like the regular folks do, right? Because that individual is a beneficiary, also known as a trust fund baby, that trust fund baby is going to come to the trust and request a loan, because beneficiaries and trustees can receive loans from the trust and can also give loans to the trust. So that beneficiary is going to say, hey, I got to go to college. I need a brand new car. Can I have $30,000? And so the trustee is then going to write a check for $30,000 and hand it to the beneficiary. So now that trust fund baby just went and bought their car cash, and to demonstrate a form of financial responsibility, they're going to then give the trust $300 a month, right, to pay back towards that loan, right? So now let's just say a year into the future, the trust fund baby decides to default on that $300, and they're like, I don't want to pay the trust $300. Well, it was a risk-free loan. So the trust fund baby doesn't have to pay the $300 or the loan back, because the money did not originate from the trust. The money originated from the trust fund baby's life insurance policy. So remember that that life insurance policy, the cash value, had been compounding. So it's not only compounding, it's accumulating. It's accumulation and it's compounding, right? And so now, the minute that that trust fund baby requested $30,000, the trustee contacted the carrier and issued out, requested a policy loan from their policy. And so the carrier direct deposited the $30,000 into the trust fund. And that is how the trustee was able to issue the check to the beneficiary, right? And so that money, because it originated from the life insurance policy of that trust fund baby, that money doesn't need to be paid back because it's going to automatically be deducted from the death benefit. So decades into the future, when that trust fund baby transitions, that $30,000 loan is going to be deducted from their $5 million death benefit. And then whatever is left over goes straight into the trust fund, and the trust is replenished with the death benefit. So now this is what preservation of wealth looks like, right? Where you have people that are born into the trust and people that are leaving the trust, right? And the trust is then being replenished with the death benefit, right? And this is vitally important, because that's going to put you in a position to where not only is the money being preserved, but it's also being conserved, and it's going to reach many generations into the future. So you cannot be walking around here talking about you're building generational wealth if you don't have the tools for generational wealth, if you don't have the tools for preservation, right? If you don't have these tools, you cannot say that all you're doing is making money, right? But you're not building true wealth, right? So these are the books that I recommend. What Would the Rockefellers Do is a really good book that teaches you about the marriage between a trust and life insurance. The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2, teaches you about trusteeship. Family Wealth teaches you how to run your family like a business. So everybody should be running their family like a business, to where you are the CEO of your family. Your spouse is the CFO of your family, right? And then the last one is the Complete Book of Trust, which teaches you about the different types of trust, right? So you want to take action on the information that I shared today. I want to show you a quick video of an individual that took action on the information that we shared this evening.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while, and there are a number of people offering trust these days, and I guess that's the big thing. don't own anything, control everything. That kind of, I didn't say it correctly, but that is the sentiment. And so it seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions. Things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you. And thank you, Mondo. That was a great explanation of infinite banking. I know a number of people are talking about that, but they make it so complex. And his presentation was nice and succinct and very informative. So this has been an overall great experience. I definitely will recommend you to others.
All right, you guys, so we can work together. I do have a program that teaches you step by step how to set up your trust, okay? So you have 3 different options here. The first one is do it yourself, where you will be enrolled into our course. So the course, it has 43 video modules, and you will be able to receive the templates for the 3 trusts that I mentioned. So that is the business trust, the family trust, and the tax-exempt nonprofit trust, okay? So you learn step by step how to set up all 3 of the trusts, and then you get lifetime access to the trust and to the program, and then you have all your resources and ebooks. So for example, all the books that I just mentioned in the previous slide, you get all of them electronically. Some of those books, if you try to get them on Amazon, they'll cost you anywhere around $800, right? But you get the electronic version. And then as far as the resources, we give you all the resources that you need in order to operate your trust efficiently and effectively. Meaning, if you need to transfer your real estate, we give you the quick claim deeds. If you need to transfer your cars, we give you the bill of sale. If you need to transfer your LLCs, we give you the business purchase agreements and the amendments. So you need to be able to know all of these things so that you can operate the trust the right way, okay? Then we also have a private Facebook community and Telegram chat. So inside of this community, we have over 2,200 trustees in our community. And you have full access to them, okay? So these are individuals that are in your state, they are in your city, and they are like-minded individuals, okay? So you have access to people that have been operating trusts for years, that have their houses and cars and bank accounts under trust. So it's powerful for you to be doing life with people who are in the same direction as you, right? So with the course is only $997. The second option is done with you. So done with you is where we do it in a workshop style setting. So we are going to show up on Zoom 5 days a week. Okay. So it's going to be 1 week long. It's 5 days. It's Monday through Friday from 11 in the morning to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And on Monday, I'm going to show you how to set up the business trust. So we break down every single paragraph of the trust live so that I can show you step by step. But it's important for you to know what's inside of the trust so that you can know how to operate the trust, okay? And then I'm going to dive into Q&A so I can answer any and all questions that you might have and provide some clarity, right? And then on day 2, we're going to set up the family trust together. So once again, we're going to break down every single paragraph and then we dive into Q&A. Now, the thing that I love about the workshop is that because it's in a group setting, you have other individuals that once again are like-minded individuals and they're asking really good questions that you didn't know that you wanted to know. And so you get to then learn more because of the people that are in the Zoom with you, right? So on Wednesday, we are going to set up the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. Then I'll show you how to get your tax-exempt EIN number with the IRS. And then I'll show you how to go through the online ordination process if you want to become ordained. On Thursday, we're going to focus on OPM. So first, I'm going to show you how to get your EINs, and then also a list of bank accounts, the steps that you need to take to get a bank account for the trust. So we'll go through banking procedures and operations. I'll show you how to have a board meeting for your trust because it's super important. And then I will show you how to document how much you're going to fund the trust with. And then after that, what happens is we have a funding manager who's going to come in, one of our educators. He's going to come in and teach you about business credit and funding so that you can be able to leverage OPM, the bank's money, and get the money that you need in order to acquire assets for the trust. Okay, so we show you step by step the wealth building formula live. Okay. And then we dive into Q&A so that we can answer all of your questions. And then the last day is Friday, where we focus on assets and trust taxes. So first we take an inventory of your assets so that you know which assets that you want to actually place inside of the trust and which ones qualify to go inside of the trust, and then which assets don't. And then after that, I'm going to show you how to transfer your real estate into the trust. I'm going to show you by way of the quitclaim deed, I'm going to show you how to transfer your vehicles into the trust by way of the bill of sales, and how to transfer your LLCs and corporations into the trust. And then lastly, our CPA comes in and teaches you how to file taxes for the trust and answers all of your tax questions. So that is the workshop. You do have lifetime access to the workshop. So we do the workshop every 3 to 4 weeks. So we do it once a month. So the next workshop is going to be May 4th to the 8th. And you can attend May, June, July, August, or just in a lifetime. Okay, so you have lifetime access, which is super powerful, but you get that sense of accountability, right? Because we hold your hand through the whole process. So the workshops are only $2,500. And then the last option is done for you. Done for you is where my team and I are going to be able to set up all 3 of your trusts for you. We apply for your EINs so that you're able to open up your bank accounts, and then we transfer all of your assets. So the house, the car, the businesses, everything like that. So you get individualized support. We go through your structure so that you are properly structured and everything is customized. So with those private sessions, you do get the extended support, which is vitally important, and it's pretty much hands off, right? So you don't have to do anything yourself. And usually this is for individuals who they have multiple assets, multiple businesses, or they're not tech savvy. They just don't want to do it themselves. Okay. So done for you is only $7,500. So you guys just choose, which one works best for you and your family. And what you can do is you can go to our website. So it's wealthytrustee.com. You can ask, any questions that you have. So our number is on the screen, the email is on the screen, and you can visit us on social media. And for those of you guys that are on the call, if you guys take action in the next 24 hours, then you guys can enjoy 20% off using the discount code TRUST20 on our website, wealthytrustee.com. So what I want to do is I want to show you what a trust looks like. So this is what an example of our trust looks like. So everything that you see in red is what you're going to be customizing for the trust. Okay, so as I mentioned, we break down every single paragraph of the trust so that you can understand the contents of the trust. Okay, that's super important. And then this is what the actual program looks like. So if any one of the programs, you do have access to the course. Okay, so if you do the workshop or if you do done for you, you still get access to the course. It's lifetime access. So in 2 years, 3 years into the future, if you need to set up another trust, you just log right into the portal. Okay. So with the portal, right, this is the online training. And so the first thing is that you learn about the trust entity. So what a trust is, the different parties involved, right? The grantor, trustee, beneficiaries, successors, protectors, the different types of trust. Then you learn how to set up the tax exempt trust. You learn how to set up the family trust. You learn how to set up the business trust. Then you go through tax strategies so that you can understand distributable net income and how to avoid tax evasion. And then you go through asset protection so you can take an inventory, and then you can go ahead and start opening banking accounts, brokerage accounts, and transferring your properties, your cars, your LLCs, and having board meetings. And then we go into wealth creation so that you can learn about OPM and business credit. You can learn how to invest with the stock market and the infinite banking with the life insurance policies. We go into wealth preservation, and then here are all of your resources and your templates and your ebooks. Okay. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and open up the floor for Q&A. so that I can answer any questions that you guys might have. So do you guys have any questions based off of the information I shared tonight? So someone in the chat said if you're already being sued but haven't gone to court, is it too late? No, it's not too late to set up the trust. So you want to go ahead and, do that as soon as possible. Frida has a question. Hey, Frida. Is it Farida? Am I saying it the right way?
Yes, Farida.
Oh, Farida. That's beautiful.
Yes. Thank you. I'm fine. How are you?
Wonderful. Thank you for asking.
That's good. I have a few questions, if it's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
The first thing, in terms of, I was looking to set up an LLC for doing government contracts, for getting government contracts. But with the business trust, which I didn't even know that was a thing before, do you think that would I be able to just operate with the business trust to do that, or would the traditional LLC be more, I don't know, does that make more sense to get government contracts with?
So with government contracts, you definitely want to use the statutory entities, which are the LLCs, and then have it be owned by the business trust.
Okay, that's what I thought. All right. Would I set up the trust first and then create the LLC?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that your name is never on the public record. So don't do it backwards like everyone else.
Okay, so it's a business trust and then it's the LLC.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha. And then, so you were saying something about funding the business trust. Do you have to have an LLC to fund a business trust?
No.
No, so you can get funds for a non-operational business trust?
Yes.
Oh, wow. That's very interesting. Okay. Can you put a car in your trust if you're still paying on a car note?
No. So if it has a lien holder, then then you don't have the title, and the lien holder won't allow you to transfer the title.
Okay, got you. And then, so in terms of building business credit for the business trust, how do you know what like an estimated time frame, how long that usually takes if you're starting from scratch to build business credits where you could get a credit card or loans?
Yeah, it just depends. So you can generate a paydex score as early as 90 days. It depends on how many trade lines that you apply for and if you're using yourself as a personal guarantee or not. So it'll be faster if you use yourself as a personal guarantee.
Okay. And then what is the purpose of becoming ordained, or is there a benefit to that?
Yeah,
Or is
there's tax benefits to it, and it only depends on how you're going to operate the entity. So
Okay.
it's optional.
Gotcha. Okay, that's my questions. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here this evening. I appreciate those great questions.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else have any questions?
Yes, I had a question, well, a few questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I saw your question in the chat, but I know you're going to ask it now, so go for it, Miss Lisa.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Welcome.
So just wanting to verify, my husband and I both have our names on our mortgage. When we put that home in the trust, we can put it in the trust before it's paid off, or we have to wait until it's paid off?
Yeah, you can put it in the trust before it's paid off because you actually have the deed to your property and you're actually the owner of that property. So you can dispose of that property however you would like.
Okay, and then both of our names are on the contract, so we both have to put, do we have to have two trusts, one for my husband and one for me, with both of our names on the one deed? Or we have one trust and we both just sign it on the one trust? I'm trying to verify if we both need to have trust with everything on it, or
Yeah, so it would be one trust. So it would be one trust, and both of you guys are going to sign over the deed.
to the trust.
Yes, to the trust.
Okay. Okay, and then will we need to have, let me see. Are we made? Oh, okay. You already answered it, I think. Oh, that's just what I wanted to verify. I sign up and I have all of the different, the business trust, the nonprofit, and the personal. If my husband is ordained and he has a nonprofit, we can put it under that one. And then for me, I have a business, I put that under that one. We have to have both of our names on everything, or that's what I'm trying to make sure.
You don't. You can be selective. You don't have to have both of your names on everything if you don't want to.
So we can have multiple trusts in each one of those, right? Multiple
Correct.
businesses, multiple nonprofits. Okay. And okay. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Miss Lisa. Thank you.
Okay.
So someone was asking, will the cash value interest pay off the interest that's accrued from the credit card? So you can allocate it to that if you would like. And let's see if there's any other questions. Do you have access to the videos to rewatch, and how long? Yeah, you have lifetime access to all of the videos. You can rewatch them. So it's forever. So lifetime means lifetime. With the revocable trust, you can be the grantor, trustee, and beneficiary. So yeah, that's with revocable, yeah, but your assets are not protected with revocable. If you get a grantor, they can't be a part of the trust besides the grantor. That's correct. If the trust is irrevocable, then that grantor can only serve as the grantor. Who then becomes the trustee or the grantor of the trust? So usually, if two spouses are setting up a trust, then both of them are going to be co-trustees. So under the 508, do you suggest using your personal name? No, you should not use your personal name to name the trust if that's what the question is. And do you give different names for each trust? That is correct. So each trust is its own separate entity and it needs its own name. So just think of like three babies being born. You're not going to name the baby like the same first and last name. You're going to give them all three different unique names. So what is the fastest way to build business credit once a trust is established? So the fastest way is for you to be a personal guarantor for the entity to build business credit. If not, then you're going to have to go the route of building credit off of the EIN only. And that's going to require you to have multiple trade lines reporting to the business credit so you can generate a PIDIC score. Who do you recommend for the trustees and guarantors to be? So inside of our program, as I mentioned, we have over 2,200 people. And so we have our own personal directory of people that volunteer. So the only thing that I own is a car. I don't have a business. Is the wealth building formula the way out of the rat race? It surely is the way out of the rat race. So if you put yourself in a position to where you can set up a trust, then the trust will be able to carry out the wealth building formula for you. Okay, so that's the foundation of it all. So you have to actually have the foundation Because if you're building a house, do you want to build your house on a soft foundation to where it's going to come crumbling down, or do you want to build it on a solid foundation? So your trust is the solid foundation, and that's why you need it. So I'm glad that you're in a position to where you only have one asset, because once you establish the trust is then going to acquire all of the assets that you need. The trust will acquire the business. The trust will acquire the real estate. The trust will acquire the life insurance policies. So set your foundation first. So Dwayne said, you are a rock star. Thank you for your time and inspiration. You are so welcome. So I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for allowing me to start this evening 30 minutes late, and for us to go, down to 47 p.m. So without further ado, let me see, there's two more questions here. Do you help us with the life insurance policies too? Yes, I do. So we do have a team of life insurance agents, and we will help you set up the policies. So everything that we have talked about inside of the wealth building formula, we help you here. So we help you with the trust taxes. We help you with the life insurance policies. We help you with setting up the trust. We help you with establishing the business credit. We help you with the real estate. So if you get into the program, then you have all of those resources available to you. Okay. So which trust does the IUL become the beneficiary of? That's great. So inside of this program, we only deal with irrevocable trusts because that's where your assets are fully protected, and that's where you're actually going to have a bulletproof trust. We do not touch revocable because your assets are not protected, so it makes no sense to set up a revocable trust. So with that being said, your IUL will go into the family trust because it is personal and not business related. All right. Awesome. Awesome. So if you guys are interested in joining the program, once again, you can visit our website, wealthytrustee.com. And if you guys are intentional and want to enroll within the next 24 hours, you can enjoy a discount of 20% using discount code TRUST20 at checkout. And if you guys are wanting to enjoy the 20% off, but maybe you can't enroll for the full amount, then you can put a deposit down. So the deposit is only $200, and that will enroll you into a payment plan. So we do have payment plan options available for those of you guys who want to make installments, and you can just pay as you go. And then once you're paid in full, then you get access to the program. And if you're doing the workshop, then you'll get access to the workshop. Okay. So if you have any questions, then as I mentioned, you can send us an email. You can also send a text message to the telephone number that you received the Zoom link, and we'll be able to answer any and all questions, and we'll be able to assist you. If you guys are interested in watching the replay, it is available on our YouTube channel, and go ahead and like and subscribe. We would definitely appreciate that, and share the replay with a friend or family member that missed out on the information that you guys were able to get, because I know that it would definitely unlocked a lot of, locked a different mindset, and that's what it takes. It takes you to take that leap of faith and know that it's going to take a different mindset and you being, thinking differently in order for you to be able to really, navigate through this space, right? Because now I already know that you are the generational curse breaker of your family, right? And so it takes that one person that looks fear in the face and say, hey, I'm going to take this leap of faith. I'm going to do it while I'm scared. I'm going to learn this information. I'm going to set up the trust for the family, right? So that you can break the chains of poverty in your family, so that you can free your entire lineage and your bloodline, so that you can change the trajectory of your children's lives, right? So that you can set them free, because now your children are going to be raised as beneficiaries and future successors, right? And so you're going to be impacting their lives and their children's life. And they're gonna look at you and be like, look at what grandma did, look at what grandpa did, right? So it takes that one person to set the whole family free, and that one person is you. So thank you so much for being here this evening, and I hope that you take action on the information that I provided tonight, because it could be your new way of protecting your assets, saving on taxes, getting structured, and just pretty much like solving a lot of your problems. So good night, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Good night.
Thank
Thanks.
So
you.
much.
Thank
That's
you.
wonderful. We appreciate you.
I appreciate you.